I keep telling the gang in the studio, save it for the radio, save it for the radio. We got some good stuff that's off here. It's not blue, it's not pay-per-view, it's just good family stuff. It's family radio, the pulse of Valley business. Newstalk 710 KURV. Hour 2 of the Sergio Show on 710 KURV, made possible by South Texas Buick GMC. Big thank you as well to Lone Star National Bank. And as you can join us as well at 710 KURV, YouTube, 710 KURV, Facebook Live, in the studio. I love this dude. A dear friend of many, many years, man. He's been with me since I was a wet behind the ears, snot-nosed little reporter. And I always love speaking with Frank. Frank Guajardo is the chief at Most History, the Museum of South Texas History, right there on the square in Edinburgh, downtown Edinburgh. It is our history dating back hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. They got like a woolly mammoth display there inside Most History as well. Frank Guajardo, deep roots in education before all these charter schools and all these efforts to send kids to Ivy League schools. Frank was with the Llano Grande Project in the Delta area, sending kids to Ivy League schools. Deep roots in education, in history. Frank Guajardo, Dr.
Francisco Guajardo.
There we go, Francisco Guajardo. Sí. Para ti es Francisco, muchacho. Yeah. Dr. Francisco Guajardo. He's one of the very few people who actually, as soon as he walks into the studio, I feel stupid. I mean, it's like we have to cart in his big head and brain into this studio. It's good. It's always good to see you, brother. And I love my conversations with you. I learn something new every time I speak with you. I'm going to send a shout out to your brother, who I have not seen in a long time. I'm hoping that he listens to KURV still. Juan Jose, brother. Juan Jose Guajardo, your brother, who's also equally an intellect, a scholar. You said he had a doctorate in
theology. When I was 17 years old, I walked into...
Is he the older or you the older?
He's the oldest one. And then I have a second one who's a professor at Texas State, Miguel.
Uh-huh.
And then we have a younger brother as well, Luis. But when I walked into my senior English classroom at Ed Calchosa High School in the fall of 1982, I walked in and I noticed that my brother was in front of the classroom. My brother was 22. He had just graduated from Pan Am, and he had been hired by Ed Calchosa High School to be an English teacher. And he had just gotten the assignment to teach the senior English class. And so my brother is in front of the class, and he's my senior English teacher. And I remember that I had an awkward moment there, where I had to go approach him and ask him.
What is this strange feeling I have in my innards? Oh, it's respect. Yeah.
¿Cómo te digo?
What do I call you?
What do I call you?
How do I refer to you? What?
So
teacher?
my brother had a moment there. My brother said, because my brother had been my coach in Pony League and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And he said to me, don't mess with Mr. Guajardo. Don't mess with Pepe is what we call him at home.
You keep Pepe in front of the kids?
Call me coach.
Okay.
And to this day, we call him coach.
Oh, man.
That's coach. That's my oldest brother. He was a fantastic English teacher. My brother would go on to write a book on grammar that would become his text. He wrote it. He authored it. It would become his text for many years as an English teacher. And he taught in several different schools in the Valley.
You mentioned four brothers. Oh, you have three brothers. I'm sorry. It's four, right, in your family, your siblings. Okay, so, of course, all of your academic prowess, your brother, education as well. You mentioned a third brother who's a professor, right? The fourth one.
My brother, Luis.
Yeah?
My brother. My brother, Luis, is an outstanding individual and smart. He's actually the smart one in the family. He's the one who has a math degree from UT.
You don't know math.
Yes.
So the question of the morning came from producer Fred Cruz, who asked it off radio and said, save it for the radio, save it for the radio. Producer Freddie, who Frank says, Freddie's very curious, isn't he? Yeah. He's inquisitive now, but what in high school? No, yeah. I'm glad you finally woke up, Freddie, and started asking the right question. In high school, he was a Malia, like trench coat, long hair, just a bad seed, just all around, just a bad seed. But now look at him. He's asking the right questions. So the question of the morning, since Frank and his brothers are so intelligent and so accomplished and examples of academic success, your parents, What do they do for a living? How did they produce?
This is so I'm going to do some framing here,
Okay.
but I have to say to Freddie and to you, Sergio, that I come at this from a very high level of privilege. So I was a very privileged child. My mother.
I'm sorry, you're from the Delta area, right? I'm
Yes.
sorry, let me check.
Great privilege.
Delta.
Great privilege.
Okay.
I'm helping you, Sergio,
Okay.
and the community understand privilege through a different lens.
Okay.
So I'm going to explain it to you.
All right.
Perhaps Freddie thought that my father had won the Nobel Peace Prize, and then my mother
More like
was,
the chemistry Nobel
so
or
this is-
physics or something.
My mother was from a very rural place in Tamaulipas. My father was from a very rural place in Nuevo León. My mother never went to school.
Yeah.
My father went to the 4th grade in rural Nuevo León.
Oof, that sounds very similar.
My mother fed us and loved us and took care of us every single day when we were growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother was able to give us a level of warmth and care and love that all we knew was that we had a privileged childhood.
Mm-hmm.
My father was a laborer. My father was a canalero. So he was a dig ditcher.
Literally digging
Literally.
ditches. Yeah.
And
right.
and when my father finally retired, he retired as a janitor at Ed Couch Elementary School. My father wrote his autobiography later in life. My mother, I have a collection of my mother's oral history. My mother was biblically literate, not really literate in other ways, except for in life and for how to raise a family.
Mm-hmm.
So the privilege that my brothers and I were afforded was the best kind of privilege any child could have.
Yeah.
And so for my brothers and for me, we thought that the world was ours because we were nurtured in such a way. My father also had a tinge of Don Quixote in him. So my father like would swing at windmills. He was quixotic in that way, almost like wildly kind of dreamy and unrealistically so. But my father didn't think that it was unrealistic. So when my father authored his autobiography, at my behest, my father wrote the most beautiful piece of literature.
Amazing.
That I would then use as the chief source of my dissertation when I finished my PhD many years later. I consulted my father's autobiography because there's lessons there. My father claimed in his autobiography that he had been a student in the greatest university, La Universidad de la Vida.
De la vida. I was going to go there. Wow.
So that's where my privilege comes from. This is why I think my brothers and I felt that we could do things in life. And I think we're productive in our own ways because of my mother and because of my father and the privilege que nos brindaron, as it were.
Yeah. Because I think if you take a look, el privilegio, privilege, it's not a direct, especially the way it is defined in current culture. The word privilege has a negative connotation from my perspective because it's misused. The word privilege that you are using is loved and nurtured and blessed. You had parents who loved you and nurtured you. And the seeds of your intellect are in your parents. 4th grade education, you said, for your dad. Wrote an autobiography. My goodness.
Wrote an autobiography.
That mind was always working, always working. Amazing.
Anécdotas de mi vida. And he writes in his very first sentence, it was at the behest of me, because the background to this story, Sergio, is that when I was an undergrad, I got this scholarship to study at Oxford University, in Brasenose College and Oxford University in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go there because I was infatuated with Shakespeare and Dickens and the Bronte sisters and all of that, right? So while I was at Brasenose College, I remember one night having a kind of an epiphany of sorts. As I was immersed in Shakespeare, I thought about, you know what, this is not what moves me. What moved me at that time and continues to were the stories that my mother and my father raised us with. So I remember coming back home. We landed at JFK in New York City, and this is during the time that we had public phones. I called my father in Elsa, right, from JFK, and I asked my father, "Oye, papi, ¿te acuerdas de todas las historias con las que nos criaron? Do you remember all those stories that you and mommy raised us with?" And my father said, "Well, of course." I asked my father, "Have you written those down?"
Yeah.
He said, "No."
Wow, my goodness.
Would you? I asked him.
What a blessing. Wow.
And my father would take the next year of his life to write his autobiography.
God bless you, Frank.
So my father
awesome.
was my Shakespeare.
Awesome. Frank Guajardo, Dr. Francisco Guajardo, he is the director of, or Museum of South Texas History, most history. It is they're on the square in downtown Edinburgh, across the street from our shiny new glistening glass courthouse. You can't miss it. It is a collection of our history here in Deep South Texas. We invite you and your family to visit. Let me start with Winter Texans, and I want to thank you for your support of that. Most history art museum, they supported us in our effort to pay the crew, get over there to the Winter Texan Expo a few days ago. The history of Winter Texans, you were starting to explain to me several centuries of migration and benefits to the economy. So tell me, educate us on the history of Winter
The land
Texans.
has this ancestral knowledge, Sergio.
Mm-hmm.
The land that we know of today is the Rio Grande Valley, South Texas. So the advent of what we know today is Winter Texans, which was really a reframe of the old snowbird, which was a pejorative. People didn't like it. And so then Winter Texan becomes what people would call them and what they would call themselves, right?
Yeah.
Winter Texans, as we know it, is really something that's a creation of the post-war period. So after the Second World War, we see this age of prosperity. And so Middle America then, in this age of prosperity, late 40s and into the early 50s, begins to rethink the weather patterns. And so folks who lived in the Midwest and the Great Plains and those very, very cold areas in this country begin to think, because now they have a little bit of disposable income. It's age of prosperity. It's a new economy.
Yeah.
They came back from the war. They want to enjoy life.
Yeah.
And so we began to see this pattern of people coming from the northern places down to South Texas as como les decían, the snowbirds, right?
Yeah.
And so this happens in a very contemporaneous way with things that were happening in South Texas that were actually quite life-changing for the region. There was a freeze in 1949 and there was a freeze in 1951 that devastated the agricultural industry.
Yeah.
While the Winter Texans in the late 40s and early 50s were coming down, they were staying in hotels in South Texas.
Uh-huh.
In McAllen, in Harlingen, in Mission, they were staying in hotels. When the freezes ravaged the agricultural industry, what we began to see is a lot of farmers punt on citrus.
Yeah.
And
raise the land.
And sell the plots of land
there we go.
that would become the resorts for RV resorts.
Wow.
That the Winter Texans would then, in their next iteration, say, you know what, we don't have to rent a hotel room.
Yeah.
Now we can have...
it's a trailer.
That's right.
Wow.
That's right. And so this really picks up in the 60s and 70s. In the 40s, post-war period, in the 50s, it's a trickle of. But it establishes kind of this trek.
And forgive me for interrupting you, but you just reminded me, post-war, Ike, the highway system that fattened up real quick. So now you have infrastructure that is developed for them to come on down.
I mean, that's a complex thing as well. With Eisenhower and the national highway system of the late 50s, part of this is also Cold War, because when Sputnik flies in 57, and almost immediately we have Congress saying we need money for science education, the National Science Education Act of 1958-59, and there are elders in this community that would tell you, I went to Pan on a National Science Education Act scholarship. Yeah, because the government immediately thinks we need our own Yuri Gagarin, the cosmonaut that flew Sputnik in 1957, October 57. And so part of this is a Cold War function of building the interstate highway system, because in case of war, we need to be able to mobilize.
Mass migration. Wow.
But of course, the federal government also understands that this is good infrastructure building. Yeah. And so this path of Winter Texans is aided by the national highway system of 58, 59 and into the early 60s. What happens with Winter Texans is that they find that this is a paradise for them. And that paradise, I think, is spelled in two different ways. Number one, the weather. But number two, the people. And there's testimony after testimony of Winter Texan that will tell you these are the warmest and friendliest people anywhere.
Yeah.
So we're going to take advantage of the nice weather, but the people here are so hospitable. So what happens is that by the 90s and into the 2000s, we see a robust aid to the economy. That depending on the sources that you look at, who the economic researchers are, some people have put this into the billions, over $1 billion of aid to the local economy, just with Winter Texans. So that becomes like that's kind of a win-win situation. Now, then the pandemic hits it. And so I think that just in the last couple of years, we're beginning to see the recovery but I think this has been, really part of the fabric of the economy as it has emerged, which I have to tell you, Sergio, has centuries as an antecedent.
Mm-hmm.
So let me explain what I mean by that.
Frank Guajardo, Museum of South Texas History, most history, our guest. Go ahead, sir.
So this is what the history shows us, as we look at the historical records, but also as we look at the archaeology, at the anthropology, at the sociology, as we look at what was happening here before the Spanish came. When the Spanish come in the 1500s and then Escandon in the 1750s, and we begin to see the settlement of communities, is that there's not a single permanent community north of the river.
Okay.
At any point before 1530, not a single permanent community north of the river. Why? The why is really two factors. Number one, the weather patterns and the availability of water. Okay. So when you look at the writings of Jean-Jacques Berlandier, who was one of the French intellectuals who came to help build the Mexican Republic in the 1820s, Mexico went and sought out these French intellectuals to come help build institutions in Mexico. Well, Berlandier was one of those. He was stationed in Matamoros. He was a young man. He was a botanist, but he was also an anthropologist. He was a chronicler of this place. Berlandier wrote a 2-volume piece, prolific writer. He wrote, north of the Rio Bravo, it's going to be very hard to make life there because of the scarcity of water. And Berlandier is actually one who warns us against erecting an agricultural industry. He says, no, don't do anything around agriculture. Family farming is fine. Small-scale farming is fine. Okay. No agriculture. This place does not have the ecological kind of resources to be able to do this.
And speaking of specifically the fresh water, because if you think down here,
fresh water.
The soil is so rich, though, because it's at the end and all the minerals and everything, all the deposits.
That's right.
Very rich soil. But
and the other reason that you didn't have permanent settlements is because of the native encroachments.
I see.
Indian raids, right? And so what happens is that the Coahuiltecans and other native tribal communities that lived here before the Spanish came, they did not reside here because of a number of reasons that I mentioned, water, right? But also because the weather, because of the flora, because of the fauna, and because of the natural inhospitability of this region. So what native people did was that they lived close to bodies of water that were the Rio Grande, south of the river, the Nueces, either side of the river. And then they would come to forage or to hunt down here, y luego se regresaban. So these were the first winter Texans.
There we go.
The native people would come down here.
The nomadic tribes that would move.
So this winter Texan kind of process that's very contemporary. The natives were doing it for thousands of years in pre-Columbian times. Wrap your head around that.
Yeah, well, the headgear and the chanclas look very different. The gray hair as well, but fascinating. Never looked at it that way. Because we know they were nomadic, but because of weather.
But think about it. Does it make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So why would the native...
It wasn't even called Texas then.
It would become Texas, Coahuila during the colonial times. But
fascinating. Oh, man. That's going to be on the quiz, Freddie. So make sure you got that.
And also, Freddie, privilege, the meaning of privilege is also on the quiz. Sergio, when you said privilege, you're from the Delta area? Yeah. Yes, privilege from the Delta area.
Yeah.
Because there are people in the Delta area who take care of their kids.
Yes, sir.
And that is a form of privilege that I think we need to own.
Yes, sir.
About who we are.
Yeah, I'd say retake the word privilege and make sure it is love and nurturing and educating and sheltering. Absolutely. Yeah, that's the way it's got to be done to protect our babies. Dr. Frank Guajardo, he is the director of Museum of South Texas History there in Edinburgh, at the Square, downtown Edinburgh. He wants to express congratulations to the McAllen Chamber, celebrating a century. You were there at the dinner a few days back.
I was there. The McAllen Chamber of Commerce called one day and they said, "Hey, can you help us? Because we understand that you have a deep treasure trove of documents about the founding of McAllen, the founding of a lot of places across South Texas." And so we said yes, and so we did one thing better, is that we took the brass from the McAllen Chamber of Commerce to Jimmy McAllen.
Okay.
At the McAllen Ranch.
Yes, that's why they wanted.
And so then the Chamber of Commerce folks go and they talk to Jimmy. He's probably, I don't know, maybe 86, 87 years old or so. And Jimmy is a font of wisdom and history and all of that. And to get into the McAllen Ranch to talk to Mr. McAllen is a treat. And so the Chamber did that. And so after the Chamber listened to the stories, not only of the McAllen family, but also of other families. And after they consulted us, the museum, and what the museum did is we helped the city of McAllen and the Chamber of Commerce come up with themes of the question, what did McAllen look like through the decades? And so we wrote out something for the 19-teens, the 1920s, the 1930s. 1920s was rich, Sergio, because the 1920s and the 1930s during Prohibition, this was a passageway for a lot of contrabando stuff. And we told the people from the Chamber of Commerce that there was this famed, mythological tequilero, one of the great bootleggers of the age of Prohibition, this guy named Francisco Garza, who was known as Pancho Chinchillo.
Kennedy, his last name. Oh, no. That's on the other side of the border.
We're going to stay away from those. We're going to stick to Pancho Chinchillo because your audience needs to know about the story of 5 foot tall, diminutive Pancho Chinchillo. He was so clever and so cunning that the Texas Rangers could never capture him. And he would bring in tequila and he would bring in other kinds of, contrabando. And Pancho was so evasive and so smart that there were corridos written about Pancho Chinchillo.
Of course, yeah.
And
before there were narco corridos, they were bootleg corridos.
I mean, these
back
were,
then.
Yes, that's right.
Wow, that's amazing.
So Pancho, when he was an older man, he, now in the 50s and 60s and 70s, he used to go by the different rancherias. So he becomes friends with Jimmy McAllen. So we tell this story to the McAllen Chamber of Commerce. And so we said, Pancho's a big deal. And in fact, he's such a big deal that he's buried in 2 different places.
Wow, what a
so he's buried in Brooks County and he's also buried in Hidalgo County. So think about it. This is the stuff
only legends
of myth and legend. So
that's amazing.
You know what the Chamber did with this story of Pancho Chinchillo? They created a specialty drink, tequila-based specialty drink, and they called it the Pancho Chinchillo. And so they served that at the 100th anniversary. But here's the other thing that we did with this. I think that the museum really aided in this process, and Jimmy was very, very helpful, Mr. McAllen, in helping McAllen understand its origin story. So when the Chamber is sitting with Mr. McAllen, and they ask, so who is like the seminal character here? Who was the heavy? Who had the gravitas? You know who it was? Salome Bailly. Salome Bailly. Salome Bailly, who would marry John Young first. John Young then died about 1859, 1860. And then her second matrimonio would be with John McAllen. And John McAllen and Salome Bailly would become a pair of great vision, great ambition, and great enterprise. Salome doesn't get nearly enough credit because Salome is not the person who's chronicled, in Hidalgo County court records, say, for example. But Salome was the driving force behind a lot of this. Salome was the landed one. Salome was the one with the vision. Salome was the one with the land grants of the Baillis and the Hinojosas and the De la Garzas, porque venía de esas familias. And so Salome, who would die in 1898, but on the eve of the American Civil War, about 1859, 1860, there was a publication that was produced that named Salome as one of the wealthiest Texans.
Wow.
Imagínate. So Salome, between that time and 1898, the year she died, had already built such gravitas and such vision that I cannot help but to draw a through line, a historical through line between Salome and the persona and the vision and the creation of the city of McAllen.
What was the cash crop for them? Was it cotton? Was it citrus? What was it?
Cattle.
It was cattle. Wow. Mira nomás.
That's the cash crop, Sergio.
Wow.
It was cattle and land, some dry farming with cotton, yes,
Sí.
but se dedicaban. They were ranch
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Salome came from that, and
Fascinating.
John McAllen would establish with others one of the very first trading posts, the McAllen Trading Post, which in fact the Chamber of Commerce created a facsimile, a kind of this facade of not the trading post, but of the very first train depot of McAllen. And so like the words look like MC and then space and then Allen. And that's how they presented it to the public that one night when they celebrated the 100th anniversary. Cool. So I wanted to tell that story of the Chamber of Commerce. How the Chamber, when in 1909, the very first edition of the McAllen Monitor is published, it's like oozing of ambition and inspiration and this greatness that this place is going to become. It wasn't even McAllen yet. That didn't happen until 1911. The town site was created in 1904, but the city of McAllen would become a municipality in 1911. The Monitor was publishing that this is going to be a great place, of great enterprise. Todo, almost mimicking the life of Salome.
Cool. Dr. Frank Guajardo, Museum of South Texas History. They're on the square in Edinburgh. Take your family. Winter Texans, stop by and visit as well. And take your family. I know I'm running a little short on time. Did you need to mention something on behalf of the Junior League?
I want to talk about the Junior League. I also want to talk about how we have Ranch Fest tomorrow at the museum.
Junior League, 1 minute. Tell me what's going on.
So the Junior League of McAllen is really the creation of something by a young woman who was 19 years old. Her name was Mary Harriman. She was at Barnard College, Columbia University, and she caught wind of the settlement movement. Settlement movement was about creating houses for immigrant people. So she would create the Junior League in New York City in 1901. In 1938, the Junior League of McAllen would be created. And in 1938, the Junior League of McAllen had as its chief project the Milk Fund. They were raising money to give milk to children. During the Great Depression.
Oh, my goodness.
How about that? This is how they start. The Junior League of McAllen would become this very consequential organization because it focused on the needs of the indigent, very much in keeping with the settlement movement of the early century. And so I gave a talk last night to the Junior League of McAllen and sort of narrated the macro story that this comes from the settlement movement, settlement houses in New York City and Chicago and other places. So McAllen would then fashion itself, the Junior League of McAllen, according to the needs of this place.
Excellent. Our buddy Davis, who's sleeping right now, he won't be waking up till about 1 o'clock this afternoon. That's viejito Davis.
Yeah.
He always refers to them as the beehive hairstyle. Junior League back in the 50s, I guess.
Well, the Junior League was really shaped by what were called debutantes. So the wives of men of great wealth. Yes. And so Mary Harriman was one of those. As a 19-year-old kid, she creates this organization. She calls it the Junior League because she was so junior herself. At the age of 19, she created this. Yeah. So now they may look like school marms and that sort of thing.
Well, that's.
But at one point, they were like young women who were doing this.
And doing good.
Today,
doing
the Junior League of McAllen is a number of very young women.
10-4. And always doing good. Always their hands and all sorts of different projects to bless the community. And you have Ranch Fest, you call it, right?
Ranch Fest. So tomorrow we celebrate the ranching heritage of South Texas, which is considerable. This whole region here, for 300 years was like ranching. And so if you look today, Sergio, I'm going to ask you, what's the most famous football team in this country?
The New England Patriots, America's team. Fred Cruz, which one is it? I got it wrong. Fred Cruz says the Buffalo Bills.
Okay, I set myself up with it. But if you look at the most endearing iconography in Texas, it is the cowboy, it is the longhorn, it is the spur, it is, it is ranching culture that has become enduring. There's still some ranching, obviously, but agriculture would butt up against ranching, and so now we have a much more complex ecosystem. But the history of ranching in South Texas is indelible, and it's important, and we're celebrating it tomorrow. There's going to be a pan de campo competition.
Boom, yeah.
Vente.
Yeah. I can't. I ate too much of it when I was a kid. I don't want me to be disgusting.
Yeah,
It didn't go down.
You were raised with privilege.
It didn't go down well. Yeah, it didn't go down well. And to this day, I cannot stand the smell or the like.
Oh, hey, no, let's
Pan
not
de
talk
campo,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, It's a darn shame. Such a rich, powerful heritage. El Vaquero, the cowboy, right? Only to have a football team in Dallas to soil all that heritage and history. So sad. So sad. These days.
This is so undermining the ethic of what it means to be from the Valley. But but I want to say that the Vaquero of UTRGV and the Vaqueras of UTRGV, I think, are part and parcel of the richness of South Texas history.
Yes, sir.
And northeastern Mexico as well.
I agree. Thank you, Frank.
You bet.
You're welcome anytime, brother. I love talking with this
Thank
dude.
you.
Dr. Frank Guajardo. He's the director of Museum of South Texas History on the Square in downtown Edinburgh. Take your family. Times 10:38, the Sergio Show on 710 KURV, made possible this hour by Lone Star National Bank. Big thank you as well to South Texas Buick GMC.